I mean, this is what I want to focus on with you, Charlie. Yamiche makes the really smart point that Trumpism is now much bigger than Trump. I'd argue that in some ways, as a movement, it's moved on from Trump, right? Like, they know what they believe, and Barnett makes this point in her primary. She doesn't prevail, but she certainly has that last momentum because she talks about MAGA. MAGA belongs to, you and me, boys and girls. But the fraud was very specifically only on the top. I mean, and anyone's seen a ballot. It's one piece of paper, right? And Jim Jordan was on the same piece of paper, the same ballot. No Republicans refused to take their seats when they were reelected because there was fraud on the ballots in Georgia or Pennsylvania or Nevada or Arizona. They all went back because there wasn't any fraud. I was elected. So how do you pierce through it's not even hypocrisy, it's just stupidity. So the ballots were only broken on the top line. Every other slot worked. How can you have so much success with that message with an electorate that isn't stupid, but just so hungry for a lie, for a permission structure to hang on to the dream of Trump?
So you are seriously looking for linear logic in all of this, and obviously they've managed to hold these ideas in their head at the same time, and they'll continue to do so without breaking a sweat. Although David Perdue in Georgia is now saying that his election was stolen as well. Look, I mean, the bottom line, and Yamiche said it extremely well. It's really January 6th forever, and I think people need to understand that. And Donald Trump has made this absolutely clear by telling Dr. Oz, just declare that you are a victory. So not only is involvement in what we regard as a seditious insurrection not a negative in Republican primaries, in many cases it's seen as a plus. Donald Trump and many Republican voters apparently insist on that as a litmus test. Now, I know that a lot of people say, well, okay, some of these candidates only got 30% of the vote, or the non-crazy candidate in Idaho won. But I think that what Reed Epstein in the New York Times pointed out, though, is this continuing pattern where you see something close to 60% of Republican voters voting for an ultra MAGA candidate or a super MAGA candidate. So you're right. Whether or not Trump's on the ballot, Trumpism, is clearly in the ascendancy. Now, the big question is whether or not Trumpism has taken on a life of its own, and whether or not Donald Trump really controls it. It is a little bit, we've talked about this before, it's a little bit like, starting the prairie fire. You may have thought it was a good idea and you can control it, but now it's taken on a life of its own, and you're seeing this, at least on the preliminary stages in some of these primaries, where the MAGA world is still there, but it is divided among itself, and there is this contest: who is the purest, who is the most extreme, who is the most unapologetically obnoxious?
Unapologetically obnoxious is sort of their brand. I want to show you, Yamiche, Pennsylvania's acting Secretary of State, Lee Chapman, at a Senate hearing today, really sort of issuing a warning we may look back on about public officials who spread these lies about election fraud.
It is especially disturbing that some disinformation has come from those with a sworn duty to defend our democratic process. The November 2020 election in Pennsylvania, like every election since, was free, fair, and secure. Allegations of illegal activity in Pennsylvania's 2020 presidential election have been repeatedly dismissed in more than 24 federal court cases and debunked by independent fact-checkers. Repeating this falsehood over and over harms our democracy and voters' confidence in our elections process.
They're the facts, but you look at that fact check so calmly delivered with the bolstering of evidence and proof, all those lawsuits, we covered them in real time, all three of us together. The number of people that will see and hear the truth and even be receptive to it is so outweighed by the number of people animated by the lie. And I wonder, Yamiche, if there are any, what is the conversation among Democrats or the pro-truth coalition that helped send Joe Biden to Washington? What is the plan to combat not just these politicians, but these lies?
It's a great question, Nicole. When I talk to White House officials, when I talk to Democrats, they say that the way to combat this is to simply tell the truth, is to continue to fact check Republicans and continue to say over and over again that not only are Democrats saying that this is a lie, but also Republicans, including Brad Raffensperger, and you see William Barr, the former Attorney General, coming out very clearly and saying the DOJ looked into this. Our election systems are very fair, they're very accurate, they're very credible. But I think the real issue that I sense is when I talk to Democratic voters, when I talk to the base, especially I was just in Pennsylvania talking to voters who are frankly frustrated in Philadelphia, in Pittsburgh. They say the Democrats need to get as aggressive, they say, as Republicans. They see Republicans running on this lie. They see Republicans electing officials who have real power, not just sort of power to tweet out things. They have real power when you think about if that GOP nominee when David Mastriana, if he wins in Pennsylvania, he will have real power over the election system. So when I talk to voters, they are very frustrated and saying the Democrats need to be doing more legislatively. They need to be doing more, they tell me, when it comes to also the executive branch and what sort of EOs President Biden might be able to sign. So there's a real, I think, concern among Democratic voters, but I think among Democratic lawmakers, there's this sort of sense that this lie has sort of spiraled, and as Charlie smartly put it, it's January 6th forever, and they don't know really what to do.